go. Here we go. Here we go, yo. It's Analysts After Work. Not that other show. Analysts After Work. I am thrilled to be back this week and be joined by colleagues, which is this is almost like a team meeting, which is a bit weird, but worlds are colliding here, maybe. But I mean, a gentleman who needs no introduction, Hans Eckman, and making his major league debut on Analysts After Work, Valence Howden. Valence, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for dragging me from AAA. I do appreciate
it. You've been making some impressive starts in the minors, and we thought, well, let's give the kid a chance. So let's see what you can do in your debut. Is it going to be a 10 strikeout?
I just appreciate you calling me kid, honestly.
Well, I mean, 10 strikeouts, or are you going out after 2/3 of an inning? That will remain to be seen, but let's see how you do, Valence. So for those that don't know you, because they're sick of me, they're sick of Hans, why don't you let everybody know who you are and what your deal is, and just do a quick intro.
All right. I work with these gentlemen. I'm an analyst. I am a crazy advocate for governance, which is part of why I'm probably here. I really look at services and how people perform. I like to play piano. I play guitar. I work on things like international standards in my spare time, which is fun for me, but not for most other people.
Yeah, that sounds exhausting. And we have a tradition here on Analysts After Work. There's always the first question is always the same, and if I don't ask the question, I get called out in the comments. And I think you can see the comments, Valence, so just play along.
I don't have my reading glasses, so I can see them.
Oh, okay. If I don't ask this, people get mad. Steve Jones gets really mad.
All right.
What are you drinking today in the after work time?
Sadly, I am drinking like water with like a little squeezable lemonade in it.
Okay. That's cool. I'm also kicking it with water. I've got it's been a hectic afternoon as we're coming to the end of our research period. So it's been water and focus and music. Those like the 40 hertz binaural beats, just like for concentration. I know it's total placebo. I don't care.
But it
It keeps me busy. So I'm rocking the water. Valence has got the water with some juice or some lemon or something. Hans, what do you got there, buddy?
No great surprise. I'm kicking my last liter of Diet Dr. Pepper. So that gives me my boost of caffeine to get through the next couple hours, because I am not done with my project. And then I'll be switching over to Fresca so that I can get to sleep and start the process all over again in the morning.
So Fresca, no caffeine.
No, I've started kicking off caffeine between 4 and 5, but I really need the boost, so I'm going all the way to 5 or 6 with caffeine today.
All right.
That's why some of us aren't doing research anymore.
Yeah, but you're doing 400 calls a week instead. And,
fair enough.
Your calls end. You do have that.
Correct.
Yeah. So I mean, let's not bore people with the inner workings of our work. So Valence, I mean, we can talk about governance. I know I said that would be the topic of today, and that was mainly because I got called out a couple episodes ago where they're like, you just talk about random crap, and okay, well, let's put some structure to it so we can talk a little bit about governance, and then we can just see where it takes us. So I mean, you're speaking to a group of analysts. There's folks here from all over the world. I'm looking at Steve from Hartford, Marianne checking in from Regina, Saskatchewan. Not Saskatchewan. Never mind. I'm not going to mention that. There was a really bad. You ever see that movie Grown Ups with Adam Sandler and that?
Yes.
And they make a joke about a guy from Saskatchewan or something like that. It's like, come on, man. Why you gotta pick on Canada? So you're speaking to a group of analysts, of business analysts. With that in mind, why should they care about governance? Why does governance matter? And why do you write about governance standards in your spare time?
That's a great question. Why does governance matter? I could probably kill an hour on myself, but if I was going to distill it down, I would say governance is what makes you either succeed or fail at almost everything you do. It is the secret sauce of every organization. It is the reason people's stuff doesn't get done, because it comes down to certain things that are just critically important. Defining a purpose and a goal for things is governance. Making sure we know how we provide value and get there is governance. Providing accountability. Who makes the decision? Who's accountable for the results? All those things. Assurance. How do I validate I get where I'm supposed to go? How do I redirect if I'm going in the wrong direction? How do I set up guardrails and protections? What's my ethical stance as an organization? How do I behave and what's expected of me? Those are all elements of governing an organization. Commitment to something, allocating the right resources for the goals we have is governance. How many people fall apart on commitment? Our leadership will not commit the resources, make decisions in line with things we want to do.
That kind of commitment. Oh, okay.
Not
different commitment. Different commitment.
Oh yeah, people fall apart on all commitment everywhere. But if if people aren't willing to govern and commit and make decisions in line with what they say you need to do, how many projects and initiatives and things fall apart right there?
So, Valence, you have just an awesome way of describing it. It really sets the stage, because a lot of times when we think of governance, we think of audit, we think of controls, we think of shutting things down. But you have a great way of describing it in terms of getting the right things done.
Yeah, it's really about enabling the organization to achieve the goals and objectives and purpose it's set for itself. And that's why control becomes such a challenge. It worked in the days when we had to control things. And control spins up out of usually flaws and errors. We did this, it burned us, so I'm not going to get burned again. So I'm going to put this in place to make sure that doesn't happen. So you build up control over time. But when you need to move quickly, I have to govern for speed. If I need to be flexible, I have to govern in a flexible way. So however I need to behave to be successful, I govern in the style that makes sense, and it changes as you go. So what worked today doesn't work tomorrow, etc.
It almost needs to be adaptive. Is what I think you're saying.
What a lead. Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of work.
That was not planned, everyone. Not planned. It just sort of worked out.
But I think the challenge is that people think you govern one way.
That's terrifying. Ron Artest, or what was it? What did he change his name to? Meta World Peace. Yeah. Meta World Peace and Dennis Rodman without governance. That's terrifying.
Well, it is.
Is he getting sued by Facebook or Elon for that?
No, it's
calling himself Meta.
METTA. Meta.
Double T's.
Double T. Yeah, he's good. He's good.
And he predates them, so maybe he should.
And he does.
But yeah, the adaptive part is not so much that we pick one style and it has to be flexible. It's I'm going to govern in the way that best suits me at this time or in this area for this purpose. Adaptive governance is different in different parts of your organizations at different times, and complexity changes it. The more complex the situation, the different, my governance has to be different, close to the ground, needs more humanity in it. And the loss of humanity in governance is a really big factor that I think gets overlooked all the time. You can't automate your way out of humanity in governance.
Well, not yet. I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
People are trying.
Well, you eliminate humanity.
Yeah, just we don't need people. They're superfluous to success.
Well, we Skynet ourselves right into that. That's
well, so one of the things.
Sorry, Hans. No, go please, man. It's my show, but you talk.
One of the things I learned from working with you, Valence, on this is, a lot of times we take that top-down view of governance, and you're right, from a goals and expectation settings, that makes sense. But really the way we've adopted it into our research, like product management, product delivery, is it needs to exist at every handoff. And the way we've expressed that is through the definition of done. If I'm going to hand this off within a phase, within a step, within a process, there is risk. Is it done? Did it meet our quality and risk standards so that I can move it forward in good conscience? Did we get the right things done? as I move from phase to phase and bigger hops, my risk increases, which means my quality, my attention may need to. So it's not about stopping things from moving on. It's from ensuring that as we hand something off, it's ready for the next step. It meets our predefined definition of done.
Yes.
And any risk or anything we pass along that exceeds that is going to bite us in the tail later, probably.
Exactly. And as you broaden it out to the amount of risk you're facing, super complex, super complex is actually almost encompasses what I want to say, but high levels of risk, high complexity situations, heavy uncertainty. Yeah, there is different levels of oversight and assurance and such required. If I can't predict it, but there's heavy consequences, I'm going to have more people looking at it because there's unknowable unknowns all over the place right now. And if I can't predict it and it's an emergent issue, it's way beyond one group's ability to understand. So we need eyes, we need vision, oversight, and a way to align things to purpose. But as your risk levels shift, there's no reason to have heavy oversight on low risk. There's no need to have heavy oversight. You can build it into the system of work, as you're talking about. I can do a lot of my governance, my assurance, and all of that in how I work, and the practices and the systems of record. And then I don't have to do all of this in committees and all these heavy structures that kill your movement.
But what about in government? Because they love, like, they really need committees, don't they?
Government often mandates committees,
I'm
and I
just
think that might be
volleying it
the
up for you.
inverse.
I
Yeah.
volleyed it up for you. It's your
Yeah.
turn to just come in and go, bah!
I know, and I
Go
try.
ahead.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say government has its own unique challenges. And it's often not so much governance, although there are mandated elements of it that you have to consider.
Sure.
I
Sure.
have a mandate I have to achieve. I've got people in roles that have really defined levels of authority and risk associated with it. That means, yeah, some of those structures you have to have. There's also certain constraints. Funding models is one of the bigger ones we deal with.
Right.
If I can only fund a certain way, then I have to govern a certain way based on that. And changing that's a much heavier lift in government. And I say all the time, if I can not be electable because of a decision you made, you're not making it. If I'm going to go to jail for a decision you're going to make, I'm making it. So the authority goes to level of risk as well. I'm not giving decision authority to somebody where I'm the one on the hook and is real risk to me. Government has that, which is there's mandates, there's people who are elected into power who have that authority, cannot concede that to anybody. But I think that's true in all organizations anyway. We forget the human element of power. And governance entails power, and people don't concede power because you ask them nicely. Oh, just give me power, delegate it here. I spent 30 years accruing power for you to tell me just give it up. I don't give it up. People don't do that. So you have to have mechanisms to change the thinking. People do not just concede authority they've derived over time.
When you've also said that one of the big keys is helping the accountable people know what they're accountable for.
Yes.
You can't force accountability. You can't force someone to do the right thing, but we have to make sure that the accountable party knows what that means. They understand their responsibilities and are willing to take it on. If not, then they have to be replaced typically if they're not willing to level up to the accountability that they have.
Yeah. But most people love the authority. They hate the accountability. And part of accountability is the ability to hold people to account. And that is the part that gets missed in it all the time. But it's also because blame is a big part of organizations as well. I had a client who actually described it in a way that I loved. He said, accountability and governance is not the person who gets fired if something goes wrong. It's the person who doesn't get fired for making the decision. They have the right to make it, and good or bad, it's theirs. So it's not that I get fired for doing it. I'm expected to do it, and there's things that happen, but that's my job to do. I'm accountable to do that, and I'm held to account for it, and that's okay.
So that's
the dodge is what gets you.
So that's interesting because usually that is the fear, right? I'm going to make the wrong call, and it's my neck on the chopping block. And I think that's that then we start to bleed into a conversation about organizational culture and punishing that, like punishing bad decisions. Or sorry, I don't want to say bad decisions. Punishing the wrong option being selected.
Yeah.
Right. and so that to me, so now we're getting into sort of my area of fun, because that is a great way to kill culture, or to have a toxic culture
Toxic.
where
Absolutely.
nobody wants to make the call because they don't want to be the one that's sticking their neck out. Even if they're, by their role, by their title, by whatever, they are the ones that should make the call. They just avoid it. They delegate it. They defer it. They just,
Yes.
until someone above them makes the decision, and then it's like, well, I didn't do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is what's always been crazy to me is, has anyone ever gone in where they've made a decision and intentionally made the wrong decision?
Of course not.
So
Perfect.
it's not that you're being punished for making the wrong decision. You're being punished because the best decision we made at that time with that available information didn't get the desired outcome.
Correct.
So we're using metrics and expectations to punish rather than to say, okay, we moved the needle this far. It needed to go this far. What do we need to do next? Or
Right.
the Fortune 100 version is, nobody ever got fired for hiring a big six consulting company to do it for them, because if they failed, nobody could have possibly done it.
Right.
Yeah. And I would also add, there's that aspect of fake delegation of authority. I delegate to you, you make the decision, and if you don't make the decision I want, then I pull the authority back. Or that was the wrong decision, and we're going to do that. Well, then you never delegated. It was do it. If you do what I want you to do, it's delegated. If you do what I don't, I'm going to pull it back and make the decision. So that fake delegation, and people recognize it. I'm just going to back off and let you make the decision you're going to make anyway. You know where you want to go.
Right.
So I find that's a really big challenge with that.
John's really,
yeah.
John's correct, as he pointed out in the comments, that not only is racy where people don't know the difference between responsible and accountable, but do you even have it published? Is it updated? Is it appropriate? Do we even define and say what that means? I know that going through racy activities, trying to have multiple people accountable, and you just cringe. It's like, no.
But even simpler than that, I mean, racy or no racy, do you have a simple matrix of delegation of authority? Who has authority to do what? Who makes what decisions? Who drives certain things into the organization? If you even know what that is, everything else will follow it pretty easily. Racy breaks you down all the way down into components, but at the governance level, it's not really in the management of work. That's not the role. And I think people get too deep into the execution. Governance's job isn't to execute, it's to assure. It's to make sure you're going in the right direction. It's to redirect. It's to do a lot of things, but they're not the boots on the ground. They're not the hands and feet on the keyboard. They are the driving factor. That's not their job.
Is the decision authority and that delegation matrix, is it organizationally or operationally aligned in healthy organizations? Because that's a debate we have in product management, that it has to be operational. It may coincide with your organization, but the operational alignment of your products and services drives the hierarchy, drives how it fits in.
I would almost invert that. It is organizational. But what I would say is, governance's job is to make sure we understand how we deliver value based on our purpose, and to make sure we're organized in a way that allows us to do it. So if we decided that product management and product orientation is the mechanism by which we deliver value, now our governance is going to structure into a product model, and hence it's going to fit the design. What happens is people don't understand how they deliver, or they're confused, or they decide it's one versus this versus that. We talk a lot about the fact that most people are this and this and that. I do products and services, I do this and platforms, I do. So what does a delivery of value actually look like to us, and are we built for it? Then we govern effectively based on that idea of where we've decided what we should look like. Now we set up the governance delegation of authority to work with that. So you're right, there has to be an operational bent, but it's based on, just lost my screen for a second, but it is based on an understanding of the orientation of the organization. And that's a decision that has to be made.
Valence, how has it taken you so long? Sorry, how has it taken me so long to invite you onto the show? Because we're talking about a topic that most people would cringe at, and this has been riveting. So shame on me for waiting until episode 3.5 season 3, episode 5, to have you on. Shame on me. Amy Riddell, if you're watching, we need to have this man at Project World in Toronto, and maybe beyond. But let's get him in Toronto, because I think this is stuff that I think business analysts need to hear, because often we defer. That we're not part of governance, we're not part of the decision making. We might help to inform the decision making, but we're not part of that governance. But that's not what I'm hearing from you. I think it's everybody's responsibility, whether you're the one making the decision or not. And it really is about providing the guardrails for the organization to operate, which includes business analysis, because the BAs are the ones that are helping to support the organization in defining what the needs are, and those need to align to the overall governance. So it's almost like they're just lanes in the highway. So you've got governance on the outside, analysis, business analysis on the inside, and then like operations in the middle, and it's all keeping things.
It all relates. Like governance is very big on guardrails, and what is guardrail except a tethering constraint is what they call it in complexity, right?
Sure.
I have a direction I'm going. I'm going to set some guardrails, and it's like a tether. I can go this far that way, this far this way, and I can operate in all types of styles within that wall. But also from a BA perspective, as I understand those, it gives context for the conversations I'm going to have. It gives a lot that I can push back, and I say that constraint is a difficulty. There's different types of constraints. There are ones that enable us to be successful. So how do we work within an enabling constraint? They're not all negatives.
Sure. It's like risks, right?
Yeah.
They're not all negative. We often think of the negative risks, but what about those that we can exploit? Like,
yes, the ones we should take.
Yeah.
Risk isn't about not taking risk. It's about knowing, having informed risk decisions.
Correct.
And I think people miss the aspect of, I can exploit a risk. I can find opportunity in risk. Correct. I can mitigate a negative one in a positive way if I open up my thinking around it.
Right.
And that governance aspect isn't, this structure or this thing that looms over us. It's a part of everything. Every single person in an organization, in every single role, no matter what you're doing, is making decisions. Yes. Some of them a little higher risk, maybe higher importance than others, but I can choose to follow a process. I can choose to do my job. I can choose to prioritize certain work. So I'm actually making decisions, and governance is the tether, if I'm hearing you correctly, to help me make one of the better options or better decisions, or knowing the risk of not doing something. Like, I'm not going to show up to work today. There's a known consequence so that we can ensure you show up whenever possible.
Yeah. And even if we tie risk in, because there's a governance from a risk perspective, that's all part and parcel of the same thing. But if it's all I may need to understand from governance is, we always talk about the organizational appetite, how much risk do we want to take? But if you really condense that to where can we tolerate risk and where can we not? So what do we do with what do we do that provides value based on our purpose? How much risk can we tolerate for those things that matter to us? If I understand what I can tolerate, I know how to manage risk. I know how to look at it from an analysis perspective. I know how to build it into my products and services, because I understand here's an area where you have no tolerance in. Here's where we can innovate and really go at it, because we can assume a certain amount of risk here safely. We're going to look at it very differently if we have no level of tolerance at all in a particular space or with a particular type of data. So it informs some better decisions. All strategy has a risk element to it. Every strategic decision does. We just don't inform it with risk, and we don't think of it from the governance layer. Strategy is a governance exercise to the extent that I have to have a direction to decide how I'm going to get there. I used to have a lot of debates on what comes first, governance or strategy. I'm like, when I decide to set up a company, I'm governing first. I've decided I want to start it. I've decided that it's going to do this. That's governance. I've decided what my direction is, what my mission is, and then I can build a strategy to achieve it, because I decided this is how I'm going to generate value. Here's what I'm going to put out into the world. But I have to govern first. I have to make a decision. I mean, the simplest thing for me was always, well, I've got strategies first, really? Who approves it?
And a strategy isn't a vision.
Correct.
And those two I find are often confused. The vision is, why do we exist? Who do we exist for? What we're doing? Yeah. And that gives the strategy that figures out how do we do it. And then the governance is, now, under what circumstances can we be successful?
Yeah. And if you even want to tie it together in a smaller organization, the reason there's so much confusion, governance, strategy, design, those are all done by the same people in the same way. It's all one unified execution. So of course we're going to confuse them when we do them as a single unit of work, but that's fine. They're supposed to be done that way. There's a false separation that I do this and I build strategy and I think my design, yeah, I might have separate activities, but the act of doing it is always interlaced. You can't build a governance model and not consider your strategy in your model. You can't build a model and not understand how you make decisions, because if you don't change your decision-making structures, it will undermine everything else you build.
And I was just going to say, you can do those things.
Yes,
I can choose to keep it separated.
Like that song in my head now. But...
And now I'm going to put that song in everybody's head. I could choose to keep it separated. That's a choice. Not going to work out well, probably, but I can do it, right? So, yeah, this is interesting. This is fascinating.
I spent a lot of time thinking about it. Sorry, go ahead, Hans.
No, I'm sure, but like, this is fascinating stuff.
Well, this leads directly into, if you want to take it on the other side, lean principles. That poor governance, poor controls gives you poor outcomes, which causes delays, rework, and waste, or excessive time in process. So the governance is getting the right things done at the right time. You still have to know for your strategy and vision what the right outcome looks like. And by integrating and by taking this more holistic approach and then defining what it means at each layer, you can free up a lot of waste, resources, and time by focusing in on the successes that really matter. So instead of being busy, you're generating value and ROI.
Now imagine if you even add, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's what I was thinking earlier when you talked about, somebody made a mistake, so we layer on governance, and it's the same thing in the process space. Someone made a mistake, so and then you end up with waste and over processing and it's over controlled, which they'll call governance, but it's over control.
Yeah.
So this is sorry, that's all I wanted to jump in there, Valence.
And even to carry on your point there, we sometimes conflate a couple of things on the process side. Even I do govern through process sometimes. My process must accomplish these things. These 5 elements must occur. What I don't want to govern is the procedures and how we do it. I can have all different models and approaches to satisfy those. I do it with change management all the time with clients sometimes. I need to know that what type of change is going to be done. I need information. Now, I don't care if it's a change request. I don't care if it's a minor request. I don't care if it's an epic. I don't care what it is. Do I know what I'm changing? And as long as I do, that satisfies my process condition of knowledge. Is it approved by the right level of authority, which is, I think a lot of the fight used to be, it's approved by CAB. No, is it approved by the right level of authority? All changes should be. Now, whether that's a product owner, the team itself, the CAB, whatever it is, what's the right level of authority? Do we know what it is? As long as that's who that group or that individual or that team does it, and they have the knowledge to do it, that satisfies the process condition. So the governance in the process is very different than the procedural execution. And I think sometimes we're so deep in the weeds of the execution, we forget that's not where governance exists.
Well, bringing it back to the BA role and something that we've probably experienced the symptom of this, think about projects or your delivery cycles and a release or the outcome or there was rework, something didn't work. So what do? We identify and say, okay, let's put the BA and make them do more work earlier. Let's do the design before we do the requirements because the design was wrong last time. And so you get things out of sequence by trying to front load. A process to be unnamed actually now has an entire, let's just say, effort being outlined and defined before it's approved or before you've started doing, some of the background work to figure if it's the right thing. So it's like, well, we had too many areas that went too far down before we decided whether or not it was a, really good thing to do. So now let's go ahead and spend all that time up front. And now we've got this sunk cost fallacy. We're going to do it anyway. Correct. And we're going to get the same bad account or bad result.
The other thing people forget with results is you can make the right decision and get a bad result.
Mhm.
Good decision doesn't guarantee outcome. So sometimes people understand the different conditions change. Sometimes you estimated wrong. Sometimes it wasn't going to do what we thought it was. Sometimes all it was going to move the needle a little bit. But if we start assuming that every decision we make, a good decision is going to have the right result, now we're going to punish that, even if it's the right thing to do at the right time. Sometimes things don't work as you expect them to, and you have to live with uncertainty. Things do not execute perfectly every single time. And the other thing that'll attach that is we don't validate much. As organizations, the assurance side, did we get where we're supposed to go? Do we understand why we didn't? We don't do that work. We work from execution to execution, and we jump because we have no resources. We're constrained. So we don't spend the time to say, did we get where we were supposed to go? And do we understand why, so we can adjust for that? I mean, moving to agile practices would partly to deal with, let's make quick adjustments for that. It hits it sometimes, it doesn't hit it sometimes, but the whole idea is, are we redirecting based on information? We just don't do it enough. And
I'm
affects that too.
speechless. Like yeah.
This is why Valence is one of my heroes.
That and the cape.
Valence is
the cape in the background sometimes.
Are you gonna sing like "The Wind Beneath My Wings" now or something? Like,
I'm hoping Hans does.
Do you think we could? I mean, if enough people put in the comments that they want Hans to sing "Wind Beneath Her Wings," Imal, I see you. Steve, I see you. AJ, you're here. Mariam, Marianne, Mohammed from Egypt. We got people all over the world here, Valence. If you want to hear Hans sing "Wind Beneath My Wings,"
I can't. And it's
okay.
it's not because I don't want to, but I have 17 years left on my karaoke ban, and I still need to be able to cross the border. So there's a few things that, I haven't hit my salary quota to become an honorary Canadian. But the 17-year ban in the US does carry over. There is reciprocity in Canada for my karaoke ban. So in 17 years,
no.
You said more Tim Hortons, more coffee.
Yellow card. Let's go back to the video replay earlier when we were talking about drinks, and because this stuck out at me. You said, I have a liter left in my Diet Dr. Pepper.
Metric.
And I'm like, all right. You didn't say like I have a quarter gallon. You didn't say that. You said I have a liter left. That just put you over the threshold. Hans Eckman, I hereby, on behalf of the nation of Canada, confer on you honorary citizenship. You don't get a passport.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I wish, but the karaoke ban is still enforced through reciprocity. So until I get pardoned by the president, there's not much I can do right now. And it is for everyone's best. There is a very distinct reason why that ban exists. It is for the good of all mankind.
It's a governance thing. Yeah.
Well done.
Bringing it back home.
Honestly, when every problem is a nail, what's that? Anyways, I'm messing it up.
It's a phase control.
We'll get Hans singing eventually. So you singing or not does not take away. You are an honorary Canadian. Welcome to the club. You say sorry enough.
Exactly.
You're fine. You're fine. You're one of us.
Exactly.
I appreciate.
You're one of us. You just live in a hotter place in the world. That's it. That's all it is.
Just make sure you get to a hockey game more often. That'll.
Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely. Grew up a hockey fan.
Yeah. Well, you're Minneapolis. You're Minnesota, right?
Minnesota border.
Minnesota is Canada, honestly. So.
It's north of Toronto.
It's Canada light. It's like the Tijuana.
Yeah, it really is. We consider you guys more Canadian than American.
I was a North Star fan, and now it's so going way back then, and then the Atlanta Flames.
Yeah.
And then the Thrashers. So everywhere I go and love hockey, someone else moves the team and they become successful.
Are you the common denominator?
The Thrashers are the Winnipeg Jets.
Oh my God, you're right. I forgot about that.
When we were up there doing the conference, Coop that year had a keynote for Amy's event, and they were really nice. They gave him, because he was a huge Thrashers fan, they gave him a Winnipeg Jets jersey, and he wore it out. And then when he started his keynote, he took it off and he had his Thrashers jersey on.
Ooh. Ooh.
Wow.
but in all good respect.
Yeah.
And
It's history.
That's
That is
how you lose an audience right there. Fantastic. I mean, hey, all in good fun. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday. We got to talking about football, and then I said, how do you prove that you're an old school team, that you're not just on the bandwagon? And I said, well, you know how I prove it? I have a 1986 Dan Marino jersey upstairs, and the guy went, "Hold on, you're a Dolphin fan?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "We can't be friends." I'm like, "Bills, aren't you?" He's like, "Yep." I'm like, "Okay, it's over." So
And here,
yeah, I get
and
it.
here immediately,
yeah.
I thought
I
you were
get it.
talking about soccer.
No,
You said
we did
football,
talk.
so I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
you must be talking about soccer." And then you went to the Dolphins. I'm like, "What?"
right.
Yeah.
So
That
if
still
I'm
reminds me of
talking,
that Bills joke, by the way, that the Jim Kelly joke for how he couldn't get into his house after the Super Bowl because they put an end zone in front of it. But
oh, I like that.
that one
I
stuck in my
like
head
that.
forever.
Oh, they could do it for the kicker too. Like he
Oh,
couldn't get his
yeah.
key in because it kept going to the right.
Great joke.
Yes. Oh, Mary Beth. No.
They had their
No.
decade.
They
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 were
had
rock
Yeah, they're
they had
almost
stars.
their
2 decades.
run.
Yeah.
No, it's Dolphin time. It's Tua time. It's Waddle time. It's Tyreek Hill time. I'm
Good
due.
lineup.
It's not a bad lineup.
I like the Dolphins. I
Bills,
just don't like people from Miami and their fans. There's just certain areas where the fans are just so over the top.
Yeah, Buffalo.
But you have to have
Like,
something to cheer for when you get that much snow. I mean, it is a saving
Yeah,
grace.
that's fair.
if
That's
you're
fair.
in Miami, you do not need to wear a 3-inch diameter gold chain with a giant Dolphins logo. For
No.
me, like the Canes, that's just
So,
I can't look at that.
so it's the obnoxious fans because those
Correct.
exist everywhere.
Not fans, not the enthusiasm,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the ones who it looks like they're dressed up for Halloween,
Right.
but Halloween if they could only shop at the Dollar Tree
Right.
or Dollarama.
Right.
Dollarama for us.
Dollarama, yeah. No, because like
I love
have
Dollarama.
so I have season tickets for Toronto FC for and I was gonna say this earlier. If I'm talking about soccer, I will say football. I'll do a British, my best British accent. We're talking football. But I have I have season tickets for TFC, and I sit sort of close to the fan zone. You came to the game with me, Hans, when you were
So
in town.
amazing.
Front row, baby. But like I just want to, like, to me it's I want to go. I just want to sort of hang out, watch the game, and have a beer, have a hot dog or something, and like I'm good. Some of these guys, they show up like it's an all day thing for them,
Yes.
and it's like I don't have time for that. You can call me a fair weather fan or whatever. I don't have time to like give my whole day. I enjoy going to the games. That's it. Like let me do my thing.
Because we don't have nearby teams. We have no derbies or anything. You want people like sitting in the
Montreal's
field
the
on,
closest.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
a fair distance away. It's
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
burn the
Well,
other team's stadium down type of
Right.
environment.
Right.
The great thing
It's
about that experience and your seats is you're right next to all of the mega fan groups, the fan groups so it's kind of like sitting somewhat near the band. If there's a big arena, but
Mhm.
you don't actually have to bring your own instrument and try and play along.
Yeah.
They've got the music, they've got the prep, they're doing everything. You can just go, "Yep, I'm with you. I'm
Just
going to
clap
watch the
when they
game, but
clap.
thank you for
Yeah.
cheering."
Yeah. And because they're terrible this year, those guys are pretty quiet too. So it's a fairly enjoyable experience. But
For all our
but there we
football
go.
fans
So
online. Yeah.
see, lots of and what's Steve saying here? If you're in Miami, you don't need a parka either. I mean, no, you don't.
You need
You
something
don't.
waterproof.
You need something
You
waterproof.
do.
But there you go.
Got some nice restaurants out there. Enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. Judy just became my best friend. Thanks, Judy. Go Dolphins. So yes, there are soft shell crab. Oh my god!
Mhm.
Like
And anything near the port of Miami is fun. So
there you go. And I don't know if we've got Danelkis here. Danelkis normally joins. She's in the Keys, but close enough. Close enough. She's usually here, but she's not here today. That's all good.
She used to be in Miami until she just moved.
Well, she moved a while ago. But anyway,
Yeah.
you know what? We don't need to talk about Danelkis's personal, like where she lives and
Her
stuff.
address
and
is
give away her address. We don't need to do that.
the
That
code
would
to
be-
her keypad.
is 1234. We keep telling her to change it, but yeah.
We just hit a governance restriction. We hit the end of the tether, and we're pulling back into appropriate podcasting.
I'm thinking that's a security one. That's a risk.
This is why Valence is such a genius and so amazing. We're
Mhm.
talking about how to apply governance, what it means, where it goes, bringing it in. Really love this type of conversation. And
Mhm.
every time we've mentioned something, he has classified that risk, that governance, the model he'd use, the constraints, how it would operate, how he would coach and help someone do that. So in that microsecond that we mentioned something, he's already run through all of those things. And then he's like, nope, I'm not on an advisory call, but
Yeah,
I'm going
I
to
need to
remember
step
this story
back.
for the
Yeah.
next one.
Yeah.
Well, we could have gone into like what are the rules and the governance around sport, right? We could like you have a defined playing surface. There are rules that everybody on the field knows, and maybe some people in the stands, like because they very rarely know the rules.
This
But
comes up.
there's governance there.
But you can still innovate within it, which people
Of
forget.
course you can.
You need a foundation to innovate things as well.
Mhm.
Anything that has heavy innovation has it.
Well, this just came up in American college football because when you get to the playoffs, each division has their own reffing crews and the interpretation of how strict they're going to enforce the rules because it's subjective. What amount of contact is pass interference? The problem you have is you then get those crews in a playoff situation or a bowl game situation with teams that haven't been playing all season under those constraints. So you get things like the Georgia-Ohio State game where they didn't call any holding or very much holding on either team. One group gets called it a lot, so they weren't holding. The other group knew they could get away with it and exploited it during the game to their advantage.
Which is
why pass
consistency
interference in the
matters.
championship. They didn't call hardly any pass interference, and it cost both teams some key plays. So, you know, a good governance, a good oversight would say, how do you ensure consistency? How do you ensure that, you know, should we be taking hybrid groups? Should we be taking the best group from each division and having them be the ones in a championship game instead of, you know, all right, the ACC is going to put another bad group of refs in and ruin everything, hypothetically.
Value of governance and structure tied back to adding flexibility and innovation. We do it in, I've been talking a lot about like jazz music and how it works, and you have governing things that are very specific, like music clefs and notation. Those are very specific structures and governance. And when, you know, jazz musicians play, they are free flowing, and it's because they trust each other. They have a unifying key that they come back to, so they can innovate as much as they want. But the key, the time, is a governing enabler. We're in 4/8 time. We're in this key at the foundation, and you can go anywhere you want, but you come back in, I go back out, or however we do it. There's some foundation that allows for it. We do it with cooking. Innovative cooks, very specific knife skills, temperatures, certain things that allow you to do it, but I can innovate all over the map with that knowledge and being able to apply those.
I take exception to that. Jazz, they're just making it up as they go. There's no rhyme or reason to jazz. It's just like I'm not even. It's just made up. Don't tell me there's rules that govern jazz.
I didn't say there are rules. I'm saying there's a common understanding. There's certain common threads of understanding in there. It is there.
I don't think that's true. No, I'm just joking. That is an awesome analogy.
Remember, Lisa, the blues isn't about making you feel better. It's about making everyone else feel worse.
Yeah, and it's true. Steve, this might be a yellow card, Steve. This might be a yellow card. I'm not sure. Let me go to the VAR for a second. But yeah, it's all made up. No, I'm just kidding. But it's everything has constraints, everything has rules, everything has like
Flow.
that was one of the whole points to the Matrix, right? If you think about it, it was recognizing that you're in a place where the rules don't actually exist except in your mind.
And
And
believing to
so
get out of it, yes.
right? So
But I'll also say there's a natural flow between the two states. If I innovate enough to realize that actively, it just becomes something that becomes standard. New techniques become accepted by everyone, and now it's a more standard technique. But if it doesn't do what I need, I'm going to innovate a new approach. And if it works, it becomes a standard that people apply. So you
right,
move, you ebb and flow between innovation and standardization all the time. New
right,
needs generate new innovation. Standard needs generate stability, and those
right,
states are always in flux.
right. And that's how we go from vinyl to cassette to CD to digital,
Yeah.
right? It's that change. Yeah,
We
I
even do
like
that
that.
on a localized level. If you think about it, your top innovators are lazy people. You do something, it's like,
Uh-huh.
is there an easier way? Is there a way I can reduce the work? Let me try
Yes.
this. Let me make a part. So we're innovating on a regular basis. Whereas people that have that mental constraint and say, no, this is the rules, this is the way we knew, they're not progressing. They're not
Mm,
progressing at the same rate. They're going to run into the same problems and constraints
Yeah.
mhm.
unless you're finding tools, techniques, different ways of doing things. Being inspired outside your domain is critical to thinking differently about the problems we have and getting rid of some of those self-imposed constraints.
Yeah. And the other thing is applying, and I'll go into the complexity of things as well, even though it doesn't always hold. But the idea is there's certain things that are
There we
reasonably
go.
clear, reasonably linear in their progression. And for that, innovation is absolutely detrimental to me. I don't need 100
Yes.
different ways to flip an egg, so this way works. It's consistent. It always works. And the level of that I require for it is different. I can have a different approach to doing it. I might flip the whole pan, have something that works, but generally speaking, it's a linear path to work. But the more
Right.
complex it gets, the more consistent standard practices are detrimental to you.
That
Now,
goes to
Rube Goldberg, Rube
Rube
Goldberg
Goldberg.
would disagree with you. You
Oh
can
yeah.
absolutely get creative with how to flip an egg.
Oh, you can. Except, but I could have it cooked and eaten before the machine was done. If
Oh,
my goal is an egg in a couple of years,
100%. They're completely useless machines, but they're kind of fun to watch.
that's what I mean.
well,
But it's the utility of it versus the
Right,
complexity of the work.
right. Yeah.
and think about this is where things like the Cunnivid framework
That's exactly
pop
where that
in.
comes in.
If you've got known knowns, then you're in a very
Clear those.
stable state. So operational consistent processes, you can lean them out, you can make them more efficient, but generally you know what you're doing. It's as you get into the known unknowns and all the way over to the unknown unknowns that
Yeah.
you don't have the stability. You need to be more reactive. You need to be
And
more innovative to solve it.
Yeah.
And you're pushing that dial back around, trying to take those areas and have them become stable known knowns
Yeah.
so that they can be operationally improved.
But if you even look at that framework, there's that whole aspect. Sorry, Vince.
No, please.
Because they apply it with the domains on the right, which is just clear or complicated. Complicated is I can go with good practice and expertise. I know enough, and with expertise, I can figure this out. It moves over to that complex domain of I need to. It's more the agile practice. I keep trying and innovate. I adjust. And then when you get all the way into that chaos, well, I just have to act. And then through the process of acting, I'll figure out enough to figure out what domain I need to move this into. But the thing that they always miss is the jump off that cliff, right? It's not that you just go from this end to that end. I can be in a stable state and drop right into chaos because of new factors. I can jump all over the map in terms of where the complexity is. So it's point in time scenarios, and then it adjusts for new conditions. So I can have a linear process that works beautifully until this happens. Then suddenly that process is going to kill me. So I got to move right back into a sense-making state and figure this out again. So I think people don't stay in stable state forever, and I think people think you will, or they try to apply it to complexity. You don't know enough to be linear there, and there's no causal link that says this plus that equals this anymore. It's why AI worries me sometimes. We always seem to know what risk we're facing.
What?
He just pulled the topic pin, tossed
What?
it into the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that risk factor of unknowable unknowns.
Mhm.
these things are going to be nonlinear. They're going to create unexpected, unknowable, unknown levels of risk. Anyone who says they know where it's going and what risk it faces is lying.
Sure.
Because I cannot predict the type of risks that are coming from a nonlinear. This is going to go in directions we don't know. It's unknowable, unknown risk. It's going to be completely novel when it hits, and it's a nonlinear path. We don't know how these are going to combine. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm saying really.
So that I do agree with, and I think the right now there's a lot of excitement around AI, and I think and I just wrote about this, that it's seen as a strategic imperative for leaders because they just see the productivity, the efficiency, the effect, the quality improvements, but what they don't see is all the stuff that underpins that, all the work that goes into training the model, all the stuff that goes into actually deciding what problem you're trying to solve. And so I think we're in a period where, so I am generally positive on AI and its usage, but I think we're about to enter a period, if we're not already in it, where a lot of organizations are going to throw a lot of money at AI superfluously. Like, I don't know what problem I'm trying to solve, but I know I need AI.
Yeah, which is what we do with every shiny new thing that shows up.
Correct. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm really in that vein of I don't know what I don't know, and nobody knows nobody knows the unknowables yet.
No, that I agree.
So I think it's a great direction to go, but by the same token, I'm very much aware that we really don't know the risks we're taking because we can't know the risks we're taking.
Simplified.
I'd agree.
A simplified analogy that I draw to it is we've all got political elections, and there's always pre-election polling. So can I really poll and get everyone's results? And then I know I have 100% data, and then whatever, but do I really trust how they answered? Well, now I'm taking a subset, and then I'm breaking out the demographics, and I'm drawing conclusions. So I'm collecting, but I don't know, was the data reliable? Was the correlation reliable? Was the categorization correct? And now I'm making decisions based on that. And then you end up seeing this, massive wave in a direction that moves your campaign, and then you end up losing like Hillary. So
we don't need to name names here, please.
But it's that.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to be killed back in your country. So it goes both ways. There's reciprocity there too.
But that's like
large numbers.
Yep. Think about AI. It's the same thing. We don't know. We don't know the accuracy or the weighting of the date. We can try and influence it. How is it being pulled together? We're getting we're getting the baked cake at the end, and then trying to make decisions about the ingredients that were used. And we can never know what actually happened when the cake was baked and everything that went into it.
But even that comes back to bias, right? And it's sampling bias, right? So because we can't survey the population, we can't, so we take a sample so that we can draw inferences on the population. I'm putting on my Six Sigma hat for a second here, but also if I'm being responsible in how I'm collecting that sample, and the example I always use is, and I just use this in one of the LinkedIn learning courses, if I'm collecting data on the average height of men in Toronto, and my sample is collected standing outside the Raptors locker room as the players walk out, it's not representative of the population. And so I have introduced bias into and I think that's the risk, that you're going to have the introduction of bias. And because I think we are on a trajectory of idiocracy. If you've seen the movie Idiocracy, I think we're on that trajectory. It's going to happen. And so you do have that introduction of bias, which then becomes the way, because that's
it influences direction of things go as well. But you're right, the unseen bias. Sorry, go ahead.
And the bias is based on volume, not accuracy or importance. We can try and tune that, but this is what's popular. It's the wave of what AI is processing by volume and correlation, and using that to extrapolate. It's like Google and search optimization has always been about this. How do you know which content is what someone's really looking for? Is it popular? Is it cited? Is it linked? They keep trying all these different ways to try and figure that out. there is that unknown bias and risk in that. We're getting good results. The results are getting better, but do we really know why we're getting it and what are we missing?
And popular doesn't mean good.
Correct.
Or credible.
I've never been popular.
Yeah. Likewise.
Well, there it aligns. There we're good.
But what I would say also, because I know I always throw it back to something from a risk side, but when we do Monte Carlos, like the whole idea of Monte Carlo simulation, trying to understand, really understand the probability of something. There's that one, the law of large numbers, which is I need a large enough sample size,
right?
And it has to be representative of the population in every way that I'm trying to simulate. I think the aspect we have is we don't replicate the population.
Right.
I don't know that I'm sampling the population as it breaks down demographically, and I don't have a large enough sample to deal with the variation. That's why it's accurate, 19 times out of 20 plus or minus 18%, okay, I have no idea. Yeah, Monty Python would be much more.
Monty Python simulations are way more fun.
And if you look at the holy hand grenade, we have governance and rules to reduce the risk of a failed operation.
But then again, like risk, no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. So,
right. Oh my God. I was just typing in. I'm not going to type it in, but
the 4 rules of governance.
I was just thinking of like what I always go to. What have the Romans ever given us? Roads. Okay, besides roads, what have the Romans given us?
Aqueducts,
government, government, democracy.
That might be the Greeks. But.
Yeah, well, in the movie, it was what are the Romans?
I know, sorry, yeah, you're
right. But
right.
what have the Romans ever given us? Aside from all these things, what have they given us? Nothing. Anyway, we're coming up on time. I do want to. So we're gonna have to wrap it up, but I want to just make a little tiny semi-selfish announcement for something that dropped last night, and I'm really sort of excited about it. I'm changing my name just for a second because I'm sort of stoked for this. But here we go. And then I gotta move Steve's comment so everyone can see it. So something happened, and I am pleased to announce that I will be presenting at, and I'm even nervous just saying this, at TEDx Aurora. Terrifying prospect, but I don't know how, I don't know why, I don't know anything, but I will be at TEDx in Aurora this October. Holy crap, now it's out there in the world. Because it's the last show, you're not going to see me for a little bit until the summer. So TEDx, I don't. Yeah. There we go. So that's my little announcement. Selfish.
Congratulations! I'm glad they had so many other speakers cancel.
Me too. Me too. I think I was like 50th on the list, and yeah.
Just ranked in. That's awesome. But yeah.
I don't know how. I'm sort of excited. Like TED is kind of real. Not that the stuff we've been doing isn't real, but this is like
there's a prestige to it. There's a certain prestige and honor.
So yeah.
And even if you're bad, you did it.
And I was thinking this one too. Now I really can say thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and mean it. So I'm excited for that. But I wanna give you guys the last word. Hans, I'll go to you first, and then over to you, Valence. What are some last parting thoughts that you want to see, that you want to share with the folks that have joined us today?
Fantastic. I'll go back to one of the first things I say is when you hear governance, don't be afraid. Think of it at that low level, a lot of our team level. It's the definition of done. It's figuring out what needs to happen in what order, and did it meet our risk and complexity goals? Did it meet our quality standards before I hand it off to the next group? If you can do that, you're going to get a lot more stability and avoid the rework. That's a great place to start, and then worry about the bigger things. For the bigger things, we go to Valence.
Right.
And I'll be speaking at no, sir.
see
Yes,
me
sir.
at live in
Right, bro.
Vegas
What?
this
Come
September.
on. Like, I couldn't wait. I've been holding that. I've shared it with a few people, but I was holding it because, like, I don't know, it's kind
Oh
of
no,
exciting.
I have my own coming up. So that's
Jeez,
cool.
Valence.
But what I was going to say is the only thing I would say to sort of tie mine up is one. It's one of my big points. Governance isn't really an optional thing. You govern from start to finish. It's the first thing you do. It's the last thing you do. It's how you close the door behind you when you end. So embrace the fact that you govern and just figure out how to do it best for your organization and be open and flexible about it. It's the same with risk. We all deal with it every single day. Every time I cross the street, every time I drive a car, we're making risk assessments. Don't fear it at work. You're doing the same activity, just with business value as the thing at risk. So if you apply it that way, it just becomes a much easier exercise to deal with.
As Blue
As
Oyster
opposed to
Cult
your
said,
personal life.
Yeah.
Your yeah. Cool.
as Blue Oyster Cult said, don't fear the risker.
Jeez. We couldn't end on that on Valence's comment. We had to end on a dad joke or a Hans joke.
Hans joke. It was bad. It was very bad. So it qualifies as a Hans joke.
It's a Hans joke. Well, Valence, Hans, I want to thank you guys for joining today. This is the last show of the summer. We're taking a little break during August. We'll be back at the beginning of September, where we pick it up. So enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you all for joining, Steve and Judy and Amy and Tamara and Sherry and Mary Beth and all, Muhammad, all of you. I appreciate you all. I can't wait to see you guys again in the fall when we pick back up with Analysts After Work. Thanks everyone, and enjoy the summer.